Hello guys and welcome to my worker empire. In this series I'm going to try to explain to you how I built mine, and I'm going to try to explain them from zero because some people may see these videos and didn't even start to do their worker empire, and mine isn't even that great anyway, so I'm going to show you guys how I started, how you should probably also start, and in the future how I'm changing mine. So to start from the beginning, I'm going to assume that you're a new player or you just didn't get into workers at all and you don't have any nodes. So the first place you're going to want to invest in is the Velia area, because one of the main resources you're going to need for your workers is beer, and you can easily cook that and also get contribution points instead of buying it from the marketplace. Once you get to around 60 workers or so, which is where I am at the moment, you're going to use at least 1000 beer or even more every single day, and you don't want to have to buy those from the marketplace. Also, if you're making them yourself, as I said, you're going to get even more contribution points to extend your empire even further. So the best way to get beer is to cook it yourself. So before I get into the nodes and show you guys what you need to invest in, I want to talk a little bit about workers, because most of you already know what workers to choose and how to use them, but newer players or some players may not know that there are 3 different types of workers and that you need to pay attention what workers you're sending to specific nodes. The 3 types of workers in this game are giants, humans and goblins, and if you look at their stamina you will notice what is the difference between them, because goblins have the least amount of stamina, but in return they work the fastest. So if you have nodes that are pretty far from a city or they just take 30 minutes or more, then it's best to use goblins, because they are going to work pretty fast, and since the node is going to take about 30 minutes, then you're not going to have to feed them pretty often. And on the other side, we have giants who have the most amount of stamina, so they need to be fed pretty rarely, but in return they work pretty slowly. So these are best to be used if you have nodes that are pretty close to a city or actually inside a city. So for example, if you are doing junk crates, which I'm going to get into later, those take about 5 minutes each. So it's best to use giants for that, because if they work 5 minutes each time, then you don't want to have goblins and feed them every hour. The last type of worker is human, and this one has the most amount of luck. There are certain nodes that can give you rare items, and those require luck, and for those humans are the best. Also, humans have a decent amount of stamina between giants and goblins, and their work time is again pretty average. It is between giants and goblins. I would say humans are a pretty balanced class, while giants are slow and goblins are fast. So now that we have the workers covered, let's get into the actual nodes. As I said, the first ones you will probably want to have are the cooking nodes for beer, and to make beer you can use one of the 4 materials. You can either use corn, potatoes, wheat or barley, and in Velia you can get easily potatoes and corn. So those are the ones you want to go for first. Right outside Velia there is Logia farm, which has 1 potato node, Bartali farm, which has another potato node, and Finto farm, which has the last potato node. These 3 are very close to the Velia city, so you can either use giants here or humans. I really wouldn't use goblins, because if they are working under 20 minutes, then you will have to feed them pretty often, and you want to save your goblins for the further nodes anyway. So I would advise to use humans on these ones. Also, when you're starting off, if you don't have any workers, I would suggest you not hire any worker that is green or white. Just go for the blue ones or above. So if you get lucky to get professional ones or artisan workers, hire those. But if not, I would suggest you to use blue workers. Now that I think about it, you might be better off using goblin workers everywhere. When you are a newer player, I would expect you to have probably most of your workers blue, and blue workers are not only that fast, so even if you're using goblin workers on those potato nodes, then you're probably going to still get around 4 hours or 3 hours of work time. I would suggest you to just check the workers, like for example hire 3 different workers and see for yourself how much time it takes for each of them to complete one of those nodes. For example, if you have a goblin worker that is going to take 35 minutes and a human worker that is going to take 36 or 37 minutes, then you probably want to use the human worker, so you have to feed them less often. Anyway, now that you have these 3 potato nodes, you can move on and get Toscani farm to get those 2 corn nodes, and in total have 5 workers that are collecting materials for cooking. And with these, you should have all the cooking nodes for beer on Velia, and you can move on to Heidel. Once you get there, I would suggest you to take that Alejandro farm node, because this one is the only cooking honey node on the entire game, and it sells for a pretty good price. I myself am not using this one to cook anything, but since the cooking honey is worth 2k each, then it's pretty profitable to just sell it on the marketplace. The last 2 beer nodes that you're going to need are Costa Farm and Moretti Plantation just below Heidel. Both of them provide 1 wheat node and are pretty close to Heidel, so you should be able to farm those pretty fast. With these you should have a total of 7 nodes that are dedicated to providing you with materials for beer. So for example, I have 64 workers and I can keep them all fed and working constantly just by using these 7 nodes. At the moment I have in my bank 15,000 beer and I already have enough materials to produce even more. Of course, I personally also have 2 more nodes near Calpheon, so I have in total 9 nodes, but you don't really need all of them. I personally just have those because I have nothing else to do with my contribution points. Now that you have these 7 nodes and you can provide your workers with beer, we can finally start to get those nodes that provide us with materials to make crates. Because the main purpose of this video and the future ones and of my entire worker empire is to produce crates and to level up my trading experience, and in the future to start trading Calpheon and Media crates for money. So, when making crates, you need to keep in mind that it matters a lot where you're making them and where you're selling them. For the best profit, at least at the moment, it is best to craft your crates in Eferia Port or in Trent and then sell them in Valencia City or Arehaza in the future, I suppose. I personally already had a lot of workers in Heidel, so I'm crafting a part of my junk crates in Heidel, but I would suggest you do that in Calpheon or in Eferia Port, because for example Trent doesn't really have that many places for lodging, so it's pretty hard to craft useful crates and also junk crates in Trent. And I personally am crafting all of my junk crates in Heidel, Eferia Port and Calpheon. So if you can do that in Eferia and Calpheon and not do anything in Heidel, it would probably be the best choice. When you're starting off to level up your trading experience, then you are not going to pay that much attention for profit anyway, because to be honest, you're actually not going to make any profit by trading in those junk crates, and to some point you're actually going to lose money. Comparing those raw materials, if you were to sell them on the marketplace, you would make more money than you would make by making them into those crates, like for example iron and copper crates. But what you want is to get that trading experience leveled up as fast as possible, so it's actually best to make those crates instead of selling the materials on the marketplace. Anyway, you can probably figure yourself where to get those workers, and I would suggest just to get them in Calpheon. In Heidel you're going to get less money because the trading distance will be shorter, and I'm not sure about the trading experience, but probably that one will be also a little bit less. I personally have 5 different workshops in Heidel because I had a lot of workers and a lot of materials. So I may change those very soon because my entire worker empire needs a little bit of change, I suppose. I made this one in about 2 weeks and now it's at a point where I know a little bit how to change it and to improve it. So don't follow my mistake and make those crates in Heidel. If you can get them in Calpheon from the beginning, then just go for that. Anyway, to get back on the track, after you get all of those cooking nodes for the beer, the next step is to start stacking up on materials for your junk crates. And the first materials you want to go for are copper and iron ore nodes, because those are very close to Heidel and Velia, so you are going to get them pretty fast. And also they are a lot, because comparing them to timber nodes, which are 3 per each type, these copper and ore nodes can be, for example, I have 6 copper nodes and I think 5 or 4 iron nodes. So it is a pretty good amount of material that you're going to get constantly. Now, before I get into those nodes, I want to talk a little bit about the lodging. So for Velia, you're not going to have that much of a choice. Basically, there are only 3 houses in Velia that provide you with lodging, so you can just get those. And also at Toscani Farm, there is another house that provides you with lodging, and that one is also connected to Velia. So once you get all those houses in Velia and in Toscani Farm, you're going to be capped out for workers in Velia. So you need to be careful which worker you send where and how many, because for example at Toscani Farm, those 2 corn nodes, I am collecting them from Heidel instead of Velia because I don't have enough lodging in Velia to do that. And for Heidel, those houses 8-1 with room 1, 2, 3 and 4 are the best lodgings to start with. And if you need even more after that, and you also have the workshop or storage bot, then you can get 7-3, because that one also is pretty good value for the lodging it offers, but to get that one you need to get 7-2 and 7-1 before that. I personally also have that one, but if you don't, then you should just stop with 8-1 and stick with those. So to finally get started with the copper and iron ore nodes, the first ones you want to connect are Imp Cave and Coastal Cave, because this way you're going to have 3 copper nodes and 1 iron node, and they are very close to Velia. And moving on a little bit up, you have Coastal Cliff, which has another iron ore node, so you should connect that one as well. Moving a little bit down of Velia, you should connect to Heidel using Forest of Plunder instead of Balenos Forest, because this way you're going to save 1 contribution point. And just below Forest of Plunder there is Goblin Cave, which has another copper ore node, so again you should get that one too. Moving down towards Heidel, just above Northern Garn Cap, the next node you want to get is Northern Heidel Quarry, because this one has 1 copper and 1 iron ore node. So again, 2 more nodes that you want to collect for materials. Probably the last node you want to get as far as copper and iron goes is Forest of Seclusion, just below Toscani Farm, and here you have another copper ore node. This one, just like the Goblin Cave, is a little bit more expensive because it costs 2 contribution points for the node itself and then 1 contribution points for the ore node. So it costs 1 extra contribution point, but it is another copper node. With these you should have all of the copper and iron ores that you need, and if you move further towards Glish and you want to connect that area, the last node that I also have is Southern Cienaga, and that one has another iron ore node. So that one I have as well, but it costs a little bit more contribution points to connect there. So once you have these nodes, you should have a total of 6 copper nodes and 3 iron nodes. And if you got the contribution points to connect the one near Glish, then you're going to have 4 iron nodes. Since this is probably one of the main materials you're going to use for junk crates, I would suggest you use pretty fast workers on these, because you want to get your trading experience leveled up as fast as possible. In my opinion, if you don't have enough goblin workers, then I would suggest you use the fastest workers for these nodes and use those that are a little bit slower for the beer nodes, because you don't really need that much beer in the beginning. I personally am crafting all of the copper and iron ore crates in Heidel because I have a lot of workers here, as I said, and it is pretty fast to transport from Velia to Heidel. But if you want and you don't mind transporting them to Calpheon or some other place like Eferia, then it is best to craft them there. Now, if you followed me so far, then it means that you have all of the BR nodes and all of the copper and iron nodes. So it is time to talk about where you're going to craft them, because if you're going to craft those iron and copper ores in Heidel, then you don't really need to spend contribution points to connect to Calpheon yet. But if you want to craft those in Calpheon, then you're going to need to spend some contribution points to connect to Calpheon. The main reason why you would want to do that is not exactly because you want to turn in those crates, because you would have to also connect Valencia to do that, but you need to have the city connected in order to feed your workers. So if you're crafting them in Calpheon, then you need that city connected. If you stay in Heidel, you cannot feed your workers in Calpheon if it's not connected. If you need to connect to Calpheon, then the route that I'm showing right now is the one you should be using to connect there, because it is the shortest one. And I'm going to get into that area later, but right now there are still things to talk about in the Heidel part. So far we have the BR nodes, and we are crafting copper and iron ore crates from the copper and iron ore nodes. I would suggest you craft those in the same place. Basically, when you run out of iron ore, you craft copper crates, and when you run out of copper, you switch back to iron, and so on. But we still need to get even more materials, because you need to have as many workers as possible making junk crates to level your trading as fast as possible. The next materials you should be getting, or at least you could be getting, are maple and ash timber. So to talk a bit about those, first we need to move back to the Velia area, because here are all the 3 ash timber nodes that we need. So the first one is at Goblin Cave, where we got that copper node. Here is another node that provides us with ash timber. So once you get this one, the next one is up just above Finto Farm. It's Ehwaz Hill, or however that one is spelled. Here again you spend 1 contribution points for the node and another one for the ash timber node. And the third one is a little bit more expensive, because this time, even though you connected Forest of Plunder to go to Heidel, the last ash timber node is at Balenos Forest. To connect this one you need 2 contribution points, and I believe also 2 contribution points for the ash timber node. So it costs 4 contribution points in total. These are probably the easiest timber nodes that you can get, and you can use these to craft again more junk crates using those wood workbenches. I myself used to craft ash timber crates in Eferia port when I was out of materials to craft those Calpheon crates. So when I was out of materials for Calpheon crates and I didn't have anything to process, I would switch my workers to ash timber crates to at least make something. Another place you can easily get the wood workbenches to make those would be Calpheon, but there I'm crafting the maple timber crates, so we are going to get into those soon. When I first started to make the crates about 2 weeks ago, I honestly thought I had enough materials to keep all of my workers going, so I intentionally made my workers craft iron and copper ore crates in Heidel, then maple timber in Calpheon, and then ash timber in Eferia port. Nowadays I see that I don't really have enough materials because my workers are not gathering them fast enough. So you could get away with having one place for ore crates and another place for the timber crates. Like for example, you could craft your ore crates in Calpheon and timber crates in Eferia or something like that. To show you guys the maple timber nodes, there are a total of 3 nodes that you can easily get to, and the fourth one that is a little bit harder, because that one is in media and it costs a lot of points to get there in the first place. So the first one you can get is in Velia area, and it is at Forest of Seclusion, where we got the copper node before. There is also a maple timber node, so there's that. The second one is in the west of Heidel at northern plane of Serendia, and this one isn't that hard to get to, but also here is another maple timber node. The third one can be a little bit expensive or pretty cheap depending on how you have your nodes connected. If you have media connected and you have Kamasilve Temple, then you can get south of Heidel at Castle Ruins directly from the Kamasilve Temple. But if you don't have that one, you should of course get it because you're going to need to connect to media anyway. But if you don't have it, you can use Eastern Gateway south of Moretti Plantation to connect here as well. But in my opinion, this one is not worth it because it costs 3 contribution points and you're not going to need this one anyway. So to make a recap, at this point, if you followed me so far, then you have all of the BR nodes, you have your iron and copper nodes to make the iron and copper crates, and then for timber you should have maple and ash timber. You could probably skip one of those, like for example maple timber, if you don't have the materials, but so far you should have 4 different items to make your junk crates. And with this you should be slowly getting more contribution points to connect to Calpheon, and in the end start to make those Calpheon or media crates. And I'm probably going to cover that and a little bit more in the next episode because this video is close to 20 minutes and I suppose it's already long enough. Next time I'm probably going to talk about what I did on the Calpheon side and on the media side, and probably how to connect to Valencia, and I will see what else I can put in the video. But for now I suppose that's about it. So thanks for watching the video, I hope maybe this one helped you in some way to build your empire, and I will see you guys on the next episode.